Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the BSN podcast. Today is Wednesday, August 10th. Hope everybody's having a day so far and a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Wednesday, August 10th here today, coming off a big night last night in the world of sports. Tough one. If you're a New York Yankee fan, another really tough loss last night as they fall to the Seattle Mariners 1-0. Could not get anything going. Offensively, couldn't get anything going on the base paths, all over the place on the base paths last night. Just base running mistakes, and these mistakes and this is where I have the issue with the Yankees. These are the mistakes that we made, that we weren't making earlier in the year, that we are now making now, and that's a big issue because as the season gets closer to October, those are the mistakes you shouldn't be making. Those are the mistakes when you get to October, when you get to postseason. You're not gonna. If you make those mistakes, you're gonna lose games. You're not gonna win, and you're gonna lose series, and your seasons. Instead of just happening to be one of 162, base running mistake could cause your season to end. So these are the type of games that really worry you as a New York Yankee fan, because yet again last night, the Yankees make boneheaded mistakes on the base paths. I mean, the whole run down and then going to second and then, bases loaded and then, Glaber not coming through, not scoring any runs, 3 hits. I mean, last night just wasn't good. And Garrett Cole gave you a very good performance. 7 innings, 4 hits, 8 strikeouts. No runs allowed. He did his job. He did what he needed to do. It was a 0-0 game going into the 13th inning. Loaizaga let up a run. Game over. And, it is what it is. So, Yankees take a tough loss. Got to find a way to bounce back today. Final game of the 3-game set in Seattle before they head all the way out back east to Boston for a 3-game set over the weekend. Mets got the win last night, 6-2 against the Reds. So, they're taking care of business. They're doing what they need to do, winning games and beating up on the bad teams. They will look to go for the series sweep today against the Cincinnati Reds before welcoming the Philadelphia Phillies to town on Friday, which will be the first of 3 games set over the weekend there. So, Yankees go for the series win today, look to bounce back after just those are one of those games where it's a game that the Yankees, the Mariners didn't win, the Yankees lost. Like that's kind of what type of game it was. The Yankees just made too many mistakes, couldn't get the big hit, weren't hitting really at all. And it was just a poor performance all around. So, Yankees look to bounce back today and still get, they're still in contention to get the series win. So, if you get the series win, you move on, you head to Boston, you move on and you throw that performance out the window. And the Mets go for the series sweep today. So, the topics for today's podcast, we're going to get into a little bit of basketball and a little bit of football. So, we're going to get into Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant starting to heat up again. He had a meeting with Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, a couple days ago. And, he basically said, look, if you want, it's either you got to choose between me or Sean Marks and Steve Nash. So, basically now Joe Tsai has the decision to make whether to keep Kevin Durant and get rid of Sean Marks and Steve Nash, the GM and the head coach, or keep the head coach and the GM and get rid of Kevin Durant, and most likely Kyrie Irving would be right there behind him. And then you wonder what happens with Ben Simmons, and you really have to kind of, really wonder what happens to the entire roster. Things would look a whole lot different if Kevin Durant gets traded. So, Nets now are tasked with a big decision. We'll get into it. I will tell you what I think the Nets should do and what I want the Nets to do, because I think it's pretty clear what side to take if you're a Brooklyn Net fan and if you are the Brooklyn Nets, because I think it's pretty clear in my opinion. So we'll get to that. We'll also get to the Mekhi Becton news. Really tough news out of the New York Jets camp yesterday. He is expected to be out for the year with a fracture in his knee. So from coming back, putting all the work in to get to training camp, there was no distractions, I guess we all could say, that Mekhi was in shape, got into the right weight, has been limping throughout training camp. Yesterday got hurt, or Monday rather got hurt. Yesterday was kind of revealed that, he's expected to be out for the entire year, and it looks like that's what's going to happen. So big blow for the Jets, big blow for Becton. What does his career now look like, and where do the Jets go from here? And they need to do something fast, because you cannot let this mess up the offense. Zach Wilson, you cannot put him in threat of being injured, in danger of being injured, because that's going to mess up, that's going to put him in danger of being injured, and it's going to mess up his progression if you don't have an offensive line protecting. So the Jets and Joe Douglas need to get something done fast, because the depth we have right now is not good enough to solidify this offensive line and still have it at the level it would have been if Mekhi Becton was healthy. So we'll get to that. Finish things off with the New York Sports Update as always. Yankees, Mets tonight, and then, tomorrow they'll both have a day off, so tomorrow there will be no baseball on for either the Yankees and Mets before both of them heading back. Yankees will wrap up a road trip in Boston. Mets will wrap up their homestand against Philly starting on Friday. So both teams today have an opportunity. Mets have an opportunity to sweep. Yankees have an opportunity to get the bad taste of last night's loss out of their mouth and get a series win. So we'll see how it all plays out. So with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. So Kevin Durant obviously has been in the headlines, has been in the news really throughout the offseason, starting when he requested a trade back in whatever it was, May or June area. June, July, actually. It was more late June, early July when he requested the trade. It blew up the NBA world where, where is he going to go? You've had trade offers coming in left and right. The day he requested the trade, you heard that at least 15 teams out of the 30 in the NBA have called, so over half the league called. And you're basically kind of just, it's all over the place. It's, it's like, where are we going from, it's where's Kevin Durant going? What are the Nets going to get in return? Possible trade packages. So it was really like big news for a couple days. And there was a lot of people out there that thought Kevin Durant, once he requested a trade, was going to get traded right away. I was actually one of those people. I thought there would be so many deals coming in because you really haven't seen somebody of that good of a player request a trade. I thought there would be deals coming in left and right where teams would put everything on the table and say, look, give us Kevin Durant, we'll give you whatever you want. That obviously has not happened. The market, I think the market's a lot smaller than a lot of people think, than what the Nets thought and what I thought and what a lot of fans thought. I think the Kevin Durant market is a lot smaller than what a lot of people thought, and that could be accumulation of a lot of things. The fact that he hasn't won in Brooklyn, the fact that the whole situation, the fact that he left Golden State to come to Brooklyn, you wonder his loyalty and all those different things. Why is he requesting a trade in the first place? Those are all questions that we have for Kevin Durant. And I'm not saying that Kevin Durant's, perfect in any means, right? I do side with Kevin Durant, but we don't really know why he requested a trade. Now, it obviously is because of management, but he did say at the end of the year that he's going to stay with the Nets. He wants to stay with them. Is this something that's more Kyrie Irving related, where Kyrie said, look, I'm not playing you. You want me to play with you? We got to go somewhere else. And that's obviously popped up in the news as well with, the possibility of maybe it being Kyrie Irving that's really trying to force this trade, and Kevin Durant being loyal to Kyrie and saying, look, we'll play together. It's got to be elsewhere. And it's popped up in rumors. So it's kind of died down since that. And a couple days ago, a meeting got scheduled between Kevin Durant and Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, who's really just a terrible owner, and he doesn't get as much hate as he should because James Dolan is another owner in town where, we all know what he's done. I mean, he's just an awful owner. Knick fans just, crush him, and rightfully so. He doesn't get as much attention, especially when you have, different owners in, New York sports that have done some questionable things over the years. Whether you're talking about Woody Johnson, Woody Johnson's not as bad. James Dolan's probably the worst owner in all of sports. But there's definitely their fair share of bad owners throughout New York, and Joe Tsai is one of them. So he basically said, look, Kevin Durant told Joe Tsai and said, look, you have to choose between me or Sean Marks and Steve Nash. The GM and Sean Marks, head coach and Steve Nash. It's either, if you keep me, that means you got, if you want to keep me, you got to get rid of Sean Marks and Steve Nash. If you want to keep Sean Marks and Steve Nash, then I'm not playing, get me out of here. That's basically what Kevin Durant said, and that is now the situation Joe Tsai has got himself into. A couple hours later, Joe Tsai goes out and tweets, "Our front office and coaching staff have my support. We will make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets." So it seems as if Joe Tsai and the organization has kind of made their decision, saying, "We believe in Sean Marks, we believe in Steve Nash, and we are going to get rid of Kevin Durant, get rid of Kyrie Irving," and maybe that's what they do. Who knows? I mean, this is a situation that's been going on for about a month, a month and a half now. I mean, this is something that's been going on for a long, long time. And it kind of died down. Now it's heating back up, and you just wonder if the Nets are going to take that route of saying, look, we're not going to trade you. We're not going to trade you until we find the very best package. You either play with us or you sit out. That's really that's what it might come down to. And, the Nets have full control of KD. He just signed the extension. They have all the power in the world, right? They might just say, look, we're going to hang on to Sean Marks and Steve Nash. We're going to look for the best possible trade option. It's going to take time. If we don't find it by, the first game of the season, if you decide to sit out, sit out. We're not going to, rush to trade you. That seems as if that's kind of the path the Brooklyn Nets are taking. But I got to admit, as a Brooklyn Net fan, look, and I understand Sean Marks has done some good things, right? He kind of took this team from, where it was just, it was terrible for so many years. It was known as the team that was, kind of the one-year contract team where you just bring in a bunch of guys on one-year deals, and you just, you could never build a foundation because the Nets had no draft picks. They had terrible decision-making in years prior. The Paul Pierce trade and Kevin Garnett trade loomed over them really throughout the course of, these past couple seasons. They were able to bring in D'Angelo Russell, were able to bring in Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, a couple other guys, build a foundation, get to the first postseason, in 2019 and really kind of get things started. Then they brought in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Sean Marks in the first place was the one who brought in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Now, he does deserve some credit there. But Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving wanted to go to Brooklyn. Kyrie wanted to go to Brooklyn. They wanted to team up. So the fact that they wanted to do that, I think it made it a little bit easier for Sean Marks. It's not like Sean Marks came in and made a big-time deal and pried them away from some other big teams. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant wanted to team up in Brooklyn. It just hasn't worked out. The whole James Harden saga, bringing him in and all this different stuff. Sean Marks' comments at the end of the year saying, we want guys that are loyal and we want guys that are committed to winning, basically throwing Kyrie Irving under the bus. That's going to get Kyrie frustrated. I think that's really what started this whole thing, because when he made those comments, Kevin Durant got frustrated. Kyrie Irving obviously got frustrated, and it basically was like, you're throwing, one of our players under the bus, basically saying, look, Kyrie's not loyal. We don't, kind of making it seem like, you might get rid of Kyrie. And how basketball works, when you get two guys that are going to team up together, they're going to be on their side. If you say something bad about one of them, it's going to go haywire, and that's kind of what has happened. So, and Steve Nash has been awful. Steve Nash has been terrible. He's been an awful head coach. His rotations, his decision-making, his time management is awful. I can't tell you the amount of times he would call a timeout after a team goes on like a 12-0 run. If you see a team start to heat up and go on like a 6-0 run, you should call a timeout. Not call a timeout after they just took the lead or something. Like, his time management was terrible. His rotations were awful. I always go back to the playoff game where Drummond was racking up rebounds. And game one of the Celtics series where we got swept, the series where Tatum hit the buzzer beater layup, Drummond was dominating the boards. You take him out, put Nick Claxton as a young player with not much playoff experience. You put him in, and he gets absolutely dominated on the boards. He can't make a free throw. Nets lose. What are you doing? That was terrible rotations. It just is, and his decision making too. Steve Nash been awful. And I gotta admit, I was a supporter of Steve Nash when they hired him, because I'm a believer in sports where if you played the game, I also think that's why players make great announcers, because you could see the game, you've seen the game from a different angle. You know the ins and outs. If you played the game, which Steve Nash did, I've always said, if you could play the game at a high level, coaching is completely different, but I thought the fact that he played, the NBA is a weird league at times with all these different players and all the different, attitudes in a locker room and all that stuff. It's a weird league. It's an interesting league. I thought that he would come in with his experience of playing. He was a very successful player, one of the better shooters of all time. Was an excellent player, in all those years with the Suns and all those teams, he was an excellent player throughout his career. I thought he would be able to kind of take what he, knowing the in-game stuff, knowing what it's like being a player, the different situations as a player, and then being able to, kind of correlate that as a coach. I thought it was a good hire. I know that Kevin Durant all them wanted him, but I don't think any of us thought Steve Nash would be this bad. He made Kenny Atkinson look good. And I know people towards the end of Kenny Atkinson run, the Nets started to have a little bit more success. But there was a lot of moments there, too, where Kenny Atkinson had some really bad moments. He coached some of the worst net teams, some of the worst teams of all time. He coached some of those 20-win Nets teams. Now, it wasn't all of his fault. Nets really had no picks. They had no draft. They had no money to spend. They were just in a dark place coming out of the Kevin Garnett trade, and where that haunted. And it did. It haunted them for years because they gave him so many. It was a terrible trade. But Steve Nash has been awful. He's awful. He makes Kenny Atkinson look like a genius, former coach. So I personally, in my opinion, when you hear that Joe Tsai tweets that out and says, the Nets coaching staff has the support of me, that's concerning. Because that's showing you that he's going down the road of, we're going to hang on to our coach, Steve Nash, that is clearly, he's done an awful job, terrible job. And we're going to hold on to Sean Marks, that has made some questionable decisions, has said some questionable things, has thrown his players, in a way, saying, oh, we want guys that are loyal, all that kind of stuff, kind of blaming Kyrie for making a personal decision with the vaccine status and all that stuff. I mean, you're going to put the organization in their hands, get rid of Kevin Durant, which is one of the best basketball players on all the planet, and now you're going to trust them to? I mean, I personally side with Kevin Durant on this one. Because Steve Nash is terrible. Sean Marks has not really done an excellent job since Kevin Durant and them got here. I mean, it's just not, I don't trust them. I don't trust Sean Marks. I know he's made some good moves, but I just don't trust him. And I don't trust Steve Nash either, because we've seen he's a dumpster fire as head coach. He's awful. I mean, he's terrible. His rotations, his time management. Like I said, some of the timeouts that he calls are ridiculous. I mean, the rotations sometimes are just so dumb. Deciding to put, Blake Griffin in a playoff game or some of these guys in a playoff game when they haven't played in a regular season game in forever. He's just all over the place. His rotations are terrible. He's not a good coach. And it doesn't really look like he's got full control of the locker room. It's just a bad situation with Nash. You got to get rid of Steve Nash. You have to. And Sean Marks, get rid of him too. Because he's done some questionable things. I know he's also made some good moves. But you have to side. I side with Kevin Durant. Because he's an unbelievable player. And if you get rid of Kevin Durant, you get rid of Kyrie Irving. Or most likely Kyrie Irving's behind him. Because if Kevin Durant gets traded, most likely Kyrie Irving's getting traded. It seems like Sean Marks doesn't like Kyrie anyway. And yet the whole Kyrie interest, the situation where with his whole, opt in, opt out, it doesn't seem like he's fully committed. There's a clear rift here. I side with Kevin Durant, and I would keep him, get rid of Sean Marks, get rid of Steve Nash, and try to win a championship. Because if you get rid of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons, who I don't care if you get rid of, he's never played a game. If you get rid of those three guys, your roster's going to look a lot different. Your team's not going to be as good as it is with Kevin Durant. Now, I know Kevin Durant has never won a championship with us. I get that. It hasn't been very successful. But a lot of it's also been the whole trade with the Harden, and the whole Harden situation was just, that's another thing. That was just a complete train wreck. I mean, it's just, this whole tenure has been bad. And the organization, from the top front office, has been poor. There's been bad decisions, to the head coach being absolutely dysfunctional. And then you go to the players, and it's clear they lost respect for Steve Nash. It's clear I understand they wanted him in the first place, but it's clear it's not working with Steve Nash, and it's obvious. I mean, they got swept. They looked lifeless down the stretch. I mean, some of those playoff games, they were awful. I mean, some of them were just terrible. The rotations in the game, and I always go back to that game one of that Boston series when he decided to take out Drummond and basically said, look, we're going to take you out, and we're going to put in Nick Claxton, who was awful, missed a ton of free throws. What was it? I think he was 0 of 6 from free throws. And the buzzer beater game winner, he got burnt. He went out to the 3-point line, went out of the paint, went out to the 3-point line to go cover Jaylen Brown because he bit. And then Kevin Durant was watching that play. Tatum slipped behind KD. Nobody was in the paint. Tatum gets the ball, puts it up for a layup, game over. If Claxton's in the paint, that doesn't happen. Claxton's a center. He's a power forward. He's supposed to be on the paint. He's not a perimeter defender. So Steve Nash did that. That blew up in his face. So he's made a lot of poor decisions. I side with Kevin Durant. I side with the guy that's one of the best player on the planet, I believe, in terms of his given ability to just score and play defense, and he's built like a basketball player. I mean, he's just a very, I don't have to talk about Kevin Durant. We all know what he's capable of, right? So I side with Kevin Durant. I'd get rid of Sean Marks, and I'd get rid of Steve Nash. I'd get rid of Steve Nash quicker before Sean Marks. Now, people have brought up the point of if you go to Kevin Durant and say, look, we'll get rid of Steve Nash. We'll keep Sean Marks. Is that something you'd, because like I said, I would get rid of Steve Nash quick. I'd get rid of him right now. Sean Marks, if the Nets keep Sean Marks, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't love it either. If it means that Kevin Durant's gone, we're all going to be pretty disappointed. But I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't think people realize, no matter what you get back for Kevin Durant, you're getting rid of Kevin Durant. Like, people have to realize that. And I know it hasn't been very successful, but it's also been a little bit of how they built the roster, the whole Harden thing, and it's just, this whole big three, big two, whatever, it's just kind of been a big mess. And in the comments in the offseason to the head coach, it's, really everybody in a way is to blame. But I would side with Kevin Durant on this one because it's shown him and the Nets haven't been this competent really in ever. You bring in a big-time star, they all of a sudden become the talk of the league. You get rid of that star, things could really take a turn for the worse because you got to realize, unless if you get a ton of draft picks in return for Kevin Durant, you're putting yourself in risk of having another 5, 6, 7 years where you're just a dysfunctional basketball team with no draft picks because he gave the Houston Rockets a million pick swaps for James Harden. You're in jeopardy of having not much money because you're still going to be paying Kevin Durant's contract because he gave him so much guaranteed because we all bought, you bought in. Now all of a sudden you're going to get rid of him and buy into a front office that really hasn't shown, that really shouldn't have your full trust. So it's just a bad situation. It really is. My personal opinion, what I want them to do is side with KD. What I think they are going to do is I think they're going to keep Sean Marks and Steve Nash. I think they are, and no doubt about it. I think the real colors of Steve Nash will come out this season because if they don't have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving on the roster, it's going to be bad. They're going to lose a lot of games, and Steve Nash's true coaching ability is going to really come out because they're not going to be winning games. His bad coaching has covered up a little bit by Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving going out there and winning some games. But his bad coaching is not going to be able to get covered up if you get rid of those two guys because your roster is not nearly going to be as good, and it's going to be affected by his bad decision-making a lot more than Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and the roster we have now. So it's a bad situation. I think the Nets, personally, are going to keep them, and I think they're going to drag this out until training camp, and they're going to drag this into the season. And they're going to basically say, look, we're not going to be in any rush to trade Kevin. You talking about Kevin Durant. We're not going to be in any rush to trade you. We're going to find the best package possible to get rid of you, and you're gonna have to sit out for the start of the year. That's what I think the Nets are gonna do. It's gonna create a lot of bad media and a lot of news and a lot of headlines around a team going into the season. But it's kind of where we're at with the Nets. This is why it's a very bad situation because if Kevin Durant holds out, that's gonna be over your head the entire year. It's gonna be tough for a team to focus. And then if he does come back, and he does play, if he's got issues with Steve Nash, you wonder how it's just a bad situation. It really is. So Nets got to choose a side. They got to do something quick. Because I said this, and I've switched my opinion on this a little bit over the past, couple times I've talked about this. You go from the fact that, whether you side with Kevin Durant, don't side with Kevin Durant, whether you believe that it's the organization, whatever, I think something has to be done quick. Because you can't have this, like I said, looming over your head for the entire season. Because that's just going to create chaos. I talked about Jets training camp. We wanted to go into Jets training camp with no distractions. Right? No distractions. Becton came in with his weight. Okay, we all know he got hurt, but that was the one big distraction. You didn't want that looming over a team. You don't want this looming over a team where a guy's holding out and then it creates a big issue. So Nets got to figure this out, and they got to figure it out quick. But I side with Kevin Durant and the players on this one because Steve Nash and Sean Marks have definitely done a lot of poor things for this franchise, especially Steve Nash. All right, so let's now get to a little bit of football. Shifting gears here to football action with Mekhi Becton out of Jets training camp. So I talked about it yesterday with Mekhi Becton. About the whole situation with him and talked about the whole situation with him yesterday. Just the knee issue and, him getting injured. And it's just a really bad situation. So yesterday, Robert Saleh at his press conference, his post-practice press conference, said that, look, his season's over for Becton. It's looking like that. He's going for another opinion today. So barring a miracle, Becton's done for the year. He's had an MRI, already had people look at it. It's a fracture. He's going for another opinion today, just, I guess, make sure to get another look at it, see if there's any further damage, see if maybe it's a little bit less than what they thought. But all signs are pointing towards bearing a miracle, like I said, with today being a second opinion, is he's going to be out for the year. So Mekhi Becton, who missed virtually all of last year, he missed all last season other than one quarter in week 1, is now going to have to go through another knee surgery, going to have to go through another rehab, and he's going to miss another season. So now you look at this Jets franchise, you look at this Jets offense line, and there's a hole. And for Mekhi Becton, as I talked about yesterday, there is true concern about his Jet future, and there's real concern about his future in general in football. And look, you hate to see this happen. You really do. Whether you believe that Mekhi Becton, whether you believe he didn't put in enough work in the offseason, whether you believe that the Jets handled this wrong, whether you believe that it was Mekhi Becton pushing himself to try to prove everybody wrong, whatever it was, look, he had a noticeable limp throughout training camp. There was many times where he had to take a knee, take off his helmet because he looked gassed. And there was many times where he was getting blown off, he was getting burnt off the edge at the tackle position. And there was many things where people had kind of, there was many concerning things. And the fact that the Jets really never took notice of it, the fact that they kept throwing him out there, the fact that Becton maybe tried to push through it, it's accumulation of a lot of things. It's a very frustrating situation because now you put yourself in not a state of panic, but where things got to be done quickly prior to week 1 now with this injury. Because I talked about just a couple of minutes ago with the Brooklyn Nets and all the distractions. Right? We went into training camp with the New York Jets with 0 distractions. Mekhi Becton came in at the right weight. He put in the work that he needed to put in over the 40 days that was separating from mini camp to training camp. He came in healthy, ready to go, and everybody was excited, pumped up. That was the biggest question mark. He came in, answered the questions, ready to go. And now here's another question mark, and it's surrounding around Becton with him getting hurt, and now another question mark looms over the Jets. This time, something has to be done quickly. And like I said, whatever it is, you hate to see it because for a guy of his size at 2 knee surgeries this early on in his career, you really hate to see it because you wonder what his future holds. Not only with the Jets, but his NFL future in general. Even if he is okay, teams are going to be weary of the injury history. To have 2 knee surgeries in less than a year. 2 knee surgeries in a year. That's, for a guy his size, and he's going to have to come back, and he's going to have to regain trust in the knee. He's going to have to regain his ability to the quickness off the line. There's a lot of things that go to it. So you wonder what Becton's future holds. That's a different story way down the line. Right now, Joe Douglas and his staff have to get something done and get something done fast. Because we remember last year with Carl Lawson when he got hurt. It was truly just it was bad. Not only tough for Lawson, but it hit the team. He was having such a good camp and it just hit the team badly. It was just there was so much positive energy. Boom, his injury goes down, and just you could feel the energy in the team just decrease. Same thing here with Becton in a way. So much positive energy around him. He gets hurt. Now things are going, now things are a little bit down. I wouldn't say as down as Carl Lawson because Lawson was having a great training camp. Becton was working his way back. But you just feel for him because you really wonder at how young as he is, what his future now holds. Jets last year acted quickly when Carl Lawson went down. They went out and signed Shaq Lawson. He was solid, wasn't phenomenal. He had a big moment, was the interception against Joe Burrow during the Mike White game. He was solid, wasn't fantastic, but he did his job. He filled in, he was all right, whatever. Now the Jets, and they acted quickly on that. A couple days later, signed Shaq Lawson. Becton now goes down. He went down on Monday. It's Wednesday. They had Dwayne Brown in for a visit on Saturday. The Jets need to make a move fast when it comes to signing another offensive lineman. Because you can't let this one injury affect the entire offense, where the offensive line starts to struggle, where you got guys rotating in all over the place at right tackle, whether it's Edoga, who is absolute garbage, whether it's McDermott, who right now is actually hurt, or whether it's Max Mitchell, who's a later round pick, and do you really trust him to take over at the right tackle position? So the Jets have a serious issue now in their hands, and Joe Douglas needs to do something, and he needs to do something fast, because you cannot let this disrupt Zach Wilson and his progress and his hopefully year 2 jump that he's going to make this year. Because Sam Darnold never had the protection, and when you see quarterbacks that don't have the time in the pocket, you can't get a really good gauge of what they're like. If he's running for his life every other play, you're not going to be able to get a gauge of what Zach Wilson's like. He needs to be in a clean pocket. He needs to have time to throw. He needs to have that ability to trust the offensive line. Because if he's under pressure every play, that's when bad habits happen. That's when it turns into where you're throwing the ball across the middle just trying to get it out. That's when you get worried and your footwork gets messed up. Look at Sam Darnold. Not only did the coaching mess him up, but the offensive line messed him up, and the fact that he had no time in the pocket, his footwork was all over the place. It was almost like he was panicking because he didn't trust the offensive line. So Joe Douglas needs to act fast because you can't put an offensive line out there right now. Wilson got sacked 8 times yesterday. 8 times yesterday. First play from scrimmage, got sacked. So he got sacked 8 times yesterday. Chuma Edoga also had a couple false starts. You can't let Zach Wilson get sacked 8 times in a football game. You can't have it. It just can't happen. His health is in jeopardy, and then his progress and his year 2 jump is then in jeopardy. It can't happen. Joe Douglas and his staff has got to step up and make a move. And I'm not saying, and I don't think this move is going to bring the season down. I'm not saying that. If the Jets struggle this year because of this, defensively, offensively, all that, then they got other problems, right? But you gotta get something done. This isn't like it's not like it's not like the season's over. There are some people that out there are like, the season's over, done, another injury. The season's not over, right? I mean, it's not over. It's not like this is it's not like it's one of your Becton's very solid for us. It's definitely a big loss. But it's not like this is one of your big time players or one of your big, like Carl Lawson last year when he went down. That was a real big blow because he was having a great camp. I mean, he looked like he could elevate that defense to another level. Jets have been needing an electric pass rusher for a long time. He brought that to the table. When he went down, it really just sucked the energy right out of the team, and you could feel it. And the defense was historically bad now last year. Now, if Carl Lawson was healthy, who knows how much better they would have been. But I'm sure they would have been a little bit better. But before you put Zach Wilson and his health in jeopardy and his progression this year in jeopardy, you got to get a deal done fast. And I don't know, and the first preseason game's on Friday, I don't know if I would play Zach Wilson on Friday. I just don't. I don't know if I do it because you're going to have Chuma Edoga out there. You're going to either have him or Connor McDermott's out 1 to 2 weeks, so it's going to be either him or Max Mitchell. And you're going to be throwing Zach Wilson out there in a preseason game when you just got sacked the other day. 8 times yesterday without Becton. So here are some possible moves with the Jets do, because I do think the Jets need to make a move. They have to. There's no way they can just roll with this depth that they got now. I mean, why is Edoga even on the team? I don't know. So here's some possible Jets tackle options. They could go after Dwayne Brown. He's a left tackle. My biggest issue with going after Dwayne Brown, it's a pretty big issue, and this is why I'm not fully for it, is he plays left tackle. So you're going to have to move George Fant over to right tackle, which is where Becton was this year, which Fant is not nearly as good at right tackle as he is left tackle. And now all of a sudden, you're going to have 2 guys trying to fit in. Fant's going to have to mesh with Tucker on the right side at right tackle, and then you're going to have Dwayne Brown. It's a lot easier to mesh, but he's going to have to mesh with Lincoln Tomlinson because those are 2 veterans. My biggest issue with that is you're going to have to move Fant. And George Fant, he earned his spot at left tackle. Jets said he's going to play left tackle. Becton's going to play right tackle, and that was the end of it. He earned his spot last year, played very well last year, coming off his best year of his career, was phenomenal at left tackle. Morgan, I was talking to somebody yesterday, I was like, Morgan Moses would have been nice to have right about now. It was solid last year. Morgan Moses would have been nice to have right about now. And just plug him in. A veteran that you could trust. So Dwayne Brown, I understand he's the biggest name, but people got to put into perspective. You're going to have to move Fant to the right side. And I'm not saying, Fant's better than Udoka, McDermott, and Mitchell, but he's not nearly as good as left side. Could you just, if Fant's left tackle, I look at it as, okay, your left tackle's good, but the left tackle's not the problem for the Jets. It's now the right tackle. So why move Fant when you told him, look, you're going to be left tackle? He's been working all off season out of left tackle. Now all of a sudden, midway through training camp, tell him, hey, go back to right tackle. I mean, you get what I'm saying? So that's my issue with bringing Dwayne Brown. Unless if you could find a way to make it where Dwayne Brown, who's 36 years old, 5-time Pro Bowler, been in the league forever, has played left tackle forever. Unless if you could say, look, I'll play right. That's the only way. I don't know. That's my one issue with Dwayne Brown. I understand out of all the group, he's the most talented. But that's my issue. Because then if Fant has a good year, what are you going to pay him? Are you going to pay him as a right tackle or left tackle? Those are all things you got to put him in consideration. And he was great last year at left tackle. He earned it. Jets said, look, he earned the spot. Now you're going to throw him at right tackle midway through training camp and say, hey, go back to right, and have to mesh with AVT, who's learning right guard, who needs, it's really tough. It's really a tough situation there with Dwayne Brown. So some other guys, Bobby Massey. He's a right tackle. You could bring him in, plug him right in at right tackle, keep Fant at left. Brian Beluga's another guy, veteran in the league. He's actually a little bit cheaper than Dwayne Brown. He's another guy. He's a right tackle, been around, played with the Packers for a number of years, played with the Chargers last season. He's a guy that's a right tackle. You plug him right in. That's a possibility. The guy I have an asterisk next to is Marcus Cannon, and the reason I have that is because I just don't see it happening. He is out there, though. We'll see. He's just, he had those years with New England, went to Houston. Could be an option there. We'll see. I think it's best for the Jets if they go out and sign a guy that's a right tackle and keep Fant at left. You bring in Dwayne Brown, well, that's fine for the left tackle spot, but right tackle is still a question because Fant's still not as good. And just in general, not that it's football, things are going to happen. It's a business. You might have to get, in any job, you might get your position changed, right? But the Jets said to Fant, look, you earned that spot, you deserve it. You deserve the opportunity, right? He earned that spot. Now, midway through camp, you're going to say that he didn't. Now, midway through camp, you're going to say, oh, go back to right tackle for us. I don't know. He's been working all off season at left tackle. He was at left tackle all of last year, filling in for Becton. Now all of a sudden you're going to say go back to right tackle. That's my issue with the Jets there. That's my issue if you do bring in Dwayne Brown. So we'll see what they do, but it definitely creates an interesting situation. My biggest thing is you go with a right tackle. And look, I view the Jets right now. They have four good offensive linemen. Fant, Tomlinson, McGovern, and an AVT, who's learning a new side. Those are your four very good guys. Your right tackle spot is the one hole. That can be filled. I'm not telling you that the season's over. I'm not saying that. If somebody says that, that's ridiculous. If you think the season's over because of this, that's ridiculous. Then you're just overreacting. You're overreacting. That's what you're doing to an unprecedented amount. But I'm not trying to sound like I'm panicking, but something does have to get done. And you could bring in a veteran, bring in a guy that could just fill the hole for this year, and then address it in the offseason if that's what it comes down to. If you bring in a guy and he has a great year like a Fant, then you cross that bridge when you get there. But just bring somebody in that you can feel confident in to protect Zach Wilson so his development and his health doesn't become an issue year 2 of his career. That's my biggest issue. That's my biggest worry, and I think a lot of Jet fans can agree. So my best possibility, my personal opinion of what the Jets should do, as much as Dwayne Brown is the shiny, best player available, I would personally bring in a guy who's a right tackle, slot him in at right tackle, keep Fant at left, and roll with it. I think that's the way. That's how you get your best offensive line combination. That's what I believe. Because Fant's not nearly as good at right tackle than he is at left tackle. So your best offensive line combination would be Fant at left tackle, roll with the guards being Tomlinson, AVT, center would be McGovern, and your right tackle being a guy that is a right tackle and has played right tackle. Instead of trying to bring a guy over to right tackle that played, all that different stuff. That's what I think is best for the New York Jets. That's what I think they should do to fill the shoes of Mekhi Becton. So, like I said, it's not panic mode. It's not panic mode. But there does have to be a sense of urgency within the Jets organization to get something done. And I believe in Douglas. I believe in him. He brought in Quan Alexander. It did take a while, but he brought him in. Even if it's just a one-year deal, just a stopgap. So, because the Jets, as much as they might say, and they're never going to publicly throw a guy under a bus, but they don't believe in McDermott and Udoka. And by the way, McDermott's injured. He's out 1 to 2 weeks. So he's going to have to come back from that too. And hope that everything's okay with that. So you put that into, the situation. So Jets just have to get this ironed out fast. That's all I'm saying. All right, so let's get to the New York sports update and finish things off. There's a lot of positives around this team, too, and that's what I want to say. Defense has played much better, much improved. Offense, there's a lot of excitement, right? There's a lot of excitement. You can't let this, bring you down where where you think the season's over. No, I'm not saying that. And I think if you're saying that, like I said, that's overreacting and you're just panicking at that point. But there does have to be a sense of urgency. And I'll leave it at that. All right, so let's get to the New York Sports Update here to finish things off here on this Wednesday edition of the BSNR program. We got the Brewers, Rays today, Cubs, Nationals, A's, Angels, Padres, Giants, Orioles, Blue Jays, Phillies, Marlins, Red Sox, Braves, Tigers, Guardians, Astros, Rangers, White Sox, Royals, Rockies, Cardinals, Pirates, Diamondbacks, Dodgers, Twins. Mets, Reds today. Mets come into today's game 72-39. Reds come into today's game 44-65. Zook on the mound for the Reds. Zook's on the mound for the Reds. No stats for him. And Taijuan Walker's on the mound for the Mets. He's 9-3 with a 3.45 ERA. Over/under set at 9. Looking to bounce back from his tough start last outing against Atlanta. 1:10 Eastern on MLB Network. You can also find on SNY. Yankees, Mariners today. Yankees come into today's game 71-40. Mariners come into today's game 60-52. Yankees have nasty Nestor Cortez on the mound. He's 9-3 with a 3.57 ERA. And the Mariners have Robbie Ray on the mound. He's 8-8 with a 3.96 ERA. Over/under set at 7. 4:10 Eastern on Yes Network. So Yankees will look for the series win. Bounce back after a tough loss last night. As for fantasy baseball, in my main league, I'm currently losing 82-66. In my other league, I'm winning 74-49. My pitchers, I got Jose Barrios and Taijuan Walker on the mound in my other league. And in my main league, I've got Jose Barrios, Taijuan Walker, and Jeffrey Springs. By the way, I made a roster move yesterday. It was tough, but I had to move Matt Carpenter to the IL, and I picked up Alec Boehm, third baseman. So that's what I did yesterday, looking to make a couple other trades. So we shall see. Anyway, that will do it for the podcast today, Wednesday edition. Enjoy the games today. Yeah, Mets, you get a little bit of Mets in. 4 o'clock, Yankees come on. Boom, leads you up into 7. And then you can watch on the baseball. So today is a perfectly lined up day for baseball. 1 o'clock, the Mets. So if you want to watch them, now will lead you right up until Yankees baseball. Watch them. Boom, take you up until 7 o'clock. And then there'll be baseball games going on throughout tonight. So a full day of baseball ahead of us. Training camp continues, preseason as well. A couple days from now, Friday, Jets will face the Eagles in Philly. So get a look at a couple of those guys. I always say this. Preseason football, though it's boring, I always like to watch preseason for fantasy options. Because you could see a couple guys that might be under the radar, fantasy possibilities, all that stuff. So preseason will be right around the corner, along with training camp will continue, saying all that good stuff. So anyway, that will do it for the podcast here today. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.